they had these defense jobs, not defense, war, that jobs with ammunition and all that to do, and Daddy wanted to get ahead and do things, and according to the length of time he was there, and according to the, the amount that they saw that he knew, they kept him doing things with the blueprints much easier than he felt he could do. And as you went on to more difficult blueprints and were successful in making it, it meant increase in your salary. And Daddy would, sometimes they'd call him, someone wouldn't show up here. They were supposed to be in at 12, and Daddy would come home at 12. He was in office for the night, and someone wouldn't show up. He got drunk and he didn't show up. And Daddy would agree he'd stay. And while he was staying, it was quiet. He got his work done. He decided to look at some of the blueprints that were more advanced, that they wouldn't let him do because, he was there a shorter length of time. But he loved that work. He really loved all that detail work and all. And he would take some of those blueprints from down below and work them out. And it was perfect, and it would be perfect. And then at a certain time they could go in, a certain amount of time that you were there, you could go in and tell them why you feel you should get more salary. So Daddy didn't. They said, no, you've been here a short time, and you can't get a better salary than what you're getting now. He says, if I show you something, would that help? And he showed him the blueprints that he had done. And at first, they said, oh, it couldn't have been, but they let him try other things, and he was way above what they wanted him to do. And he worked himself up that way. He was able to, and he was getting one deferment after the other. They wanted him to stay. Until this guy just was so jealous and so unhappy with Dad, being there, and they were being threatened by strikes. Oh, that was a terrible threat then, because there were so many jobs that had to be done, and. Once they go out on strike, most of the people don't want to stay on for fear of their lives because, they have all kinds of rebellions and stuff. So when he refused, to tell him there was nothing, he told him there's nothing that I'm doing wrong. I don't know a thing about strikes. I haven't heard anything. They wouldn't believe him. So he told him, he says, I didn't do it. You got to do what you got to do, but I am not guilty of anything like that. And he felt very hurt that he actually was a thief. He broke into Dad's box, took his tools, and was rummaging around in there and everything. Daddy, after that, that's when he told me about that night in the morning, he says, Bea, he says, I'm going to sell my tools. I'm going to get as much money as I possibly can, so I'll have it for you and the children. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to fight it. He said, I'm not going to fight it. And that's what he did. He did tell them at the defense place, he told them that he did nothing like that. I don't want it on my record. But I was told that if I didn't tell him who was doing the strike, and I didn't know, that I would be put into 1A. And he told them about that. Fast? It didn't help. It didn't help any. And then he went in, that was it.
And Barry was, what, a few months old at the time?
Barry was a few months old, and that's when, just the day before the high holidays here, Rosh Hashanah, and they wanted, that was the day he was to be inducted. And he went there and he says, could I just have that extra day and be with my family? My in-laws are having a going away party for me. In other words, he didn't think they'd know what Rosh Hashanah was. And they didn't give him that time. They didn't give him that time at all. And he was here in the States and hearing all these different stories too, after he was in the service, where they were training people for gunners, and they were training them for other things, and radio work. And Daddy would have loved that. He says he would have loved to get into that. But he also heard that that's what they were looking for. And he thought he was going into Germany. And he says they were killing them off so fast there in Germany. And he thought, no, he's gonna fail the test. He wasn't gonna do well on that test. And
intentionally.
And he didn't do well on the test. And he stayed on where he was. It was where they have the red mud. What is that place called?
Georgia.
Louisville? No, not Louisville.
Virginia.
Huh?
Virginia?
No.
Georgia?
No, not Oregon.
Georgia?
Georgia, no.
Is this a camp that you're talking about?
It was a camp in a certain place, but they have this red mud.
Lejeune?
No, it sounded like Louis. No. Anyway, he was there, and for about a month or so after this occurred, and he was being trained for a gunner, and with the tank corps, and he was working on that, and then some of these boys that were with him, when they wanted to send him for radio school and all that group was coming back. And I think there was just 2 of them left from that whole company. They were all demolished.
At Fort Benning?
And one of them came over to visit at our house in Buffalo.
In Buffalo or Chicago?
It's Chicago, on the second floor there.
In Walton Street.
Our first, real apartment, yeah.
Was this early?
So after Daddy was home, they came and they visited him. He and his son. It was rough.
The reason I'm asking about the date is because the U.S. was not winning the war, and there was a lot of stress.
And then about those pictures, that's Bea Avner. That's Grandpa's mother and father, and the mother's brother. And he was a designer of clothes in France, ladies' coats and ladies' suits and dresses.
The brother.
Bea Avner's brother.
No.
Bubby's brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I forget his name. I found out about it once, but I forget it now. And but he lived in France, and he came to the United States, and he visited, he was visiting his sister and his brother-in-law and all that. And my mother-in-law was going to make a big dinner for everybody, that they should all be together. And when she was moving the soup from one burner to another, she wanted to move it out of the way. The pot tipped, and it poured all over her and scalded her, and she was gone the next day. And she was just a young woman. She was 35 years old, left 5 children behind.
That was when Dad was about 6?
13, I think.
What, honey?
How old was Dad then?
8.
8.
Oh, he was that young.
Yeah, no, he was young. He was outside playing.
And Uncle Phil was 5 or 4. And Auntie Jean and Auntie Esther and Auntie... who else was there? Faye, Esther,
Faye.
And...
Jean, Faye, and Esther.
Yeah. They were 1 year after another. Each one was a year apart. So she left 5 very young children behind, too. Auntie Faye had to give up going to school, and Dad, Sadie Avner told her she's got to take care of the family and, go along with all the customs that her mother used to do, go and get the chicken done, and she'd have to take the feathers off, and a girl 14 years old to do all that stuff, and it was quite hard for her. But she did a wonderful job. She really did, with Uncle Phil, with Daddy, with the other 2 sisters.
So was Faye the oldest or Jean?
Faye was the oldest.
Okay.
And then Jean was a year younger, and Esther was a year younger than Jean. And then there was a big difference between Daddy and them. But that's the part that I liked, because they all wanted to practice to dance, and that was the dancing time. What year was that? Like the 40s or the 30s, the late 30s.
Must have been the 30s. 'Cause we
Yeah,
were
in the 30s, and they'd ask Daddy would be their partner, and then they danced with Dad. And you know how he was tall all the time. I met him he was 15, and he was 6'1" at that time. At that time, he stayed that height until he got older. But they managed. They got through. They were living in a bad area, though, at that time. Grandpa decided he's got to get the girls out of there because, the guys were hanging around. But he used to fix their cars and maintain their cars for them. And they wouldn't touch the girls. He says, Dixie Flyer, they'd call him Dixie. Don't touch Dixie's girls, because Dad would take care of his cars for him. And they moved when I met Dad, he was living there. I was at the house several times to birthday parties there, or New Year's parties. Dad would have a party there at his house, and it was so much fun. Then a couple of times they had me sleep over, so it was 3 o'clock in the morning. They said, you sleep with us. So the 3 girls and myself were in one bed, and we had so much fun. None of us slept. None of us got to sleep. We just had a good time. Enjoyed it all. It was nice.
I have a question. You hear stories, and just whether or not it's true, that Dad was going to go to Europe, but you got sick.
Oh.
And he had to come back, and then he ended up going to the Philippines? Is that true?
When I got sick and Dr. Sobroff called whoever you call, and they sent him home so he could be with me. He at that time he wasn't going into overseas yet. That happened a little later, honey. And they sent him to Luzon in the Philippines, and Luzon was malaria area, and they were told that they should try and clear out that area of the, the mosquitoes, and the malaria shouldn't spread anymore. And it didn't work for Al. He got malaria, and it was pretty awful. And he had enough points to come home. When you had a certain amount of points, then you could be discharged. Well, he had a lot of points, and he was going to come home. And every time he was ready to come home, he'd get malaria again. He'd get an attack of the malaria, and they wouldn't let him get on the boat or anything. They put him right into the hospital. Yeah. And it happened about 3 or 4 times. Then when he got home, when he finally got home, he went to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and was put in the hospital there. And here I knew he was in the States, and then I had the 2 little ones. What can I do, And Sadie Avner, my husband's father, came to my mother and said, "Mrs. Gerber, would you take care of the children if I took your daughter to see Al? Would you watch the children? We'd go in the morning, we'd come back that night, and we'd get to see Al. Let her know for sure how he is and how he's doing." And my mom said, "Yes, I'll do it, but you gotta wean the baby first, and get him to take the bottle." So sure enough, he got over, he got to take the bottle, and about a week later, Dad and I left, and we went up to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and he was still getting these attacks, and they wouldn't let him go home when he had that. And I saw him, and I was so shocked. He was so thin and yellow from all the Atibrine that they were, giving him for the malaria. And I think it was about a month or a month and a half later that he finally came home. And at that time they told him, I guess it's like a social worker from the services or some, from the Army. They spoke to him and they told him that he shouldn't look for any work indoors. He has a better chance of recovering if he can get something where he'll be outdoors in the fresh air at home. So when I was told about this, my mother mentioned it to our milkman, and he says, "Mrs. Gerber," he says, "we just got a fellow that's quitting the milk business, and it would be ideal for Al." He says, "Have him come down to see us." Sure enough, he went down and he got the job, and that was a lifesaver for him. One time he got a malaria attack. It was terrible. They brought him home. One of the milkmen, when it happened, he got into one of the stores that he serviced, and they called the dairy, and the dairy sent someone out and brought him home. But I never saw anything like it. It was just awful. One minute he was freezing, and all the covers that I had, I would put on him, and before I turned around, the sweat was pouring out of him. And I started taking all the covers off, and this just went on and on. He was getting so weak, and I thought, "Oh God, I'm going to lose him." It was just awful. I couldn't even take his temperature. He was burning up, and he was shivering. His chin was going 60-40 because he was so cold inwardly. And finally he got over that, and he went back, to work as a milkman. And one of the customers that he had was my sister Nettie. And on his route, he had my sister as one of the customers to leave the milk and butter and eggs and all that for him. And he loved that. He loved that little nephew. He was just a little baby, and when he'd hear somebody walking up the stairs, Al would come there about noon, and he was usually taking a nap. Whenever he'd hear anybody going up those stairs, those back stairs, he'd jump up in his crib because he thought it was Al. Al, no matter what, he'd take him out of the bed and he'd play with him and everything. Nettie agreed. She let him. The two of them would play around, then he'd put him back in bed and he'd go back to sleep. And he started to get better all the time. And then he thought, he's through at about 4 o'clock, even earlier. He was through with his work, with the milk dairy, because he was up at 4 and out, delivering the milk. So he decided maybe he'd take a job in the evening selling something. And he was feeling better already, So he tried this job that he heard about, and he went to work for him. And he did beautifully with it, a selling job of kitchen furniture. And his boss was a nut, but he liked Al. And he offered him a job of running a store in Buffalo. First was Indianapolis. Indianapolis.
But didn't he work in Chicago for a long time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He worked with Phil Bernstein for quite a while. Then he went to Indianapolis, and he had made some wonderful friends there, but didn't have a chance to get out and look for an apartment for us. We stayed in Chicago while he was in Indianapolis. And finally, one of his men in the newspaper ads, that he'd make up for the company, said, Al, he says, when is your wife going to come? He says, I can't find a place. By the time I want to go someplace, it's Sunday. I can't get out during the week. There's no one here to take over. He didn't have much help other than some kids, that came in to put things together and clean up, etc. But he was so lonesome, he'd stay at the store instead of his hotel room and put furniture together because he didn't want to be alone at the hotel. And I couldn't very well go. I had a little one yet. Mark was, how old were you? You weren't...
I was 6 months when you left.
Yes, 6 months old. It was December, and Mark was born in June. And finally, this newsman saw a place and told Al about it, and they got the house, and we were able to move there. Then Phil also, his boss, another place didn't have a manager, so he asked Al to take that. He says, it's much better opportunity for you and everything. So Al went ahead and he took that job, and we all, at that time, he says, you're not staying here. And his boss too said, Bea has to go with you this time, so you'll have a place sooner. And we both went, and I think it was about 2 weeks after we were there, we had a nice place then, that nice apartment. Where was it? Chickawaga was
Village.
Kensington Village,
Red
right?
brick, and we lived next door to Lucy.
And we met the Silvers there. Wonderful people. They're such great people. And we made a lot of friends, the Silvers, the Plaskins, and so many other friends. And we lived there for 30 years. And 30 years in Chicago. And 30 years now in Buffalo. In Florida. So we're giving each place equal time. Is that it?
That's
What
when I
on
started
it?
here too.
What?
The Snowbird.
All right, you come to, what was the name of that beach?
Deerfield Beach.
That's where Mark first came. So Rhonie comes into the picture what year?
58.
June.
Yeah.
Everybody's born in June in this family.
58. On their anniversary, I'm an anniversary present.
Yeah.
17 years.
Yeah.
So what do you give somebody on their 17th anniversary?
A baby.
When I was born, I took you to the
Very close. My birthday was the 19th, and her birthday was the
David.
15th. My birthday was the 9th, and hers is the
I think the
15th.
prom was before June.
Oh, yeah,
Might have
probably
been in
was.
May, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you were 1 year
We need to
old,
look
your
at-
dad went into the service. You were born
I
in
know.
November of 42.
But
so
there were 18 months between me and Barry.
Yes.
So if Barry was 3 weeks old, or 3
44.
months old, when Dad went into the
must have
Army,
been 44.
I would have been 21 months old. Yeah, and 44.
And
So how, help me understand the chronology. When did Dad come back that I beat him up?
Oh, that was just on a. That was on a.
Furlough.
It wasn't even a furlough. He had a 50-mile pass and went 300 miles and came home and got a lift with a truck so he could come home. And we were in the apartment where the dining room was, and there was Daddy in bed with me, and you got up. You got up, and you're calling me, so I went to get you, and I brought you to bed. You to the bed, yeah. Are you out of?
No.
And what happened was that she actually never met Daddy, or yes, you did, but you were too little.
Only the picture that I kissed goodnight every night, and he had his hat on and his uniform.
She used
here
to
was
kiss
somebody
it every
without a hat.
night.
Without a uniform, in bed with my mother.
Uh-oh.
Not good.
No.
Yeah.
you do-
I beat
Sure,
him
because
up.
all the pictures, all the.
And he was crying, and I was
Oh,
crying.
no.
And
It
that
was
was in
a-
45?
Had to be, but it was before he got released. This was before.
Oh, he
got,
was still in the service, sure. But he had gotten a 50-mile pass, and he came on 300 miles, you know. And a trucker saw him, thumbing a ride, and he stopped, and he wanted to know where Dad was going. He said, I was going in the other direction, but hop in. I'll take you, then I'll go where I had to go. And he took him all the way home. I took him home. He
So
got
you just
home at
spent the
3
night?
o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget that. I never expected him. And on top of it, Zadie, my father, where is Zadie? Oh, he's behind Gloria. That's a picture of him and his two brothers. This
Turn
is
it to the camera.
this is my dad. This is my dad, and then here is the next oldest brother, and this is the youngest brother. And my dad hears.
Dad? Yeah, this is
Oldest.
Grandma.
Yeah. My dad hears Daddy whistling. You remember Daddy used to whistle all the time? In the nighttime, 3 o'clock in the morning, he hears Daddy whistling. He got so excited he fell out of bed. He was running to the window to see.
See, because we have
Right
we live
across the-
alley, so we're on two different streets. We were like, here's Walton Street, and there is Richmond Street, and here's the alley. So there's Bubby and Zadie's apartment, and here's where we lived, right?
Yeah. And then
We actually heard Dad whistling.
he heard Dad whistling. What's the name of that song? Stardust. Well, he loved Stardust. For our engagement, he got me a record of Stardust and a wristwatch, a Bulova wristwatch with diamonds on the side here, because we couldn't afford a ring at that time. So he got me the wristwatch, and he got me the record of Stardust. So here he's whistling Stardust. Daddy fell out of bed. Rana's crying, Gloria's crying. Oh my God, that was an exciting night. That was quite an exciting night, really. Oh God. But after a little while, everything was great. Everything was great.
How long did he get to stay home?
He had to go back. Zadie Avner came over. That he had a 30-mile or 50-mile pass, but he had till midnight of that next day.
Oh,
so what happened was, I always shared. I told all my sister-in-laws that their brother was home, and they all came trooping in, plus the dad. And Dad brought in, his father brought in everything imaginable from the delicatessen and all kind of bakery things and everything, and then took him to the airport so he could get a plane. He didn't want him to try to hitch a ride back. And he got him a ticket to go to the plane. And he went home, went back from home.
And how much later did he get released from the Army?
Oh, much later, because this was before he even went overseas, honey.
That was before he went overseas.
Well, sure, that was before.
And where was that?
That was
hospital
before.
in Wisconsin?
What, honey?
Where was that hospital in Wisconsin?
Camp McCoy, Wisconsin.
Don't know where that is.
And it was a big receiving area, where a lot of the fellows were received and then mustered out of the service.
Right.
But it took so long for him because he was so sick, so they wouldn't let him go home. But I never saw anything like that. I never want to see it again. Oh, dear God, I hope nobody ever gets sick like that again. I just couldn't find any more warm things to put on him. And no sooner would I put them on than they were all off on the floor.
Does flare up.
Oh, we had to take anti-malaria pills lots of times. That's right.
I did too.
When you're going places.
What else, Cora?
Oh, did you
You're
know that
sweetheart.
one way Mom got extra money in the war?
Oh, yes.
Zadie wasn't the only clever one. You know that Zadie Gerber.
Wait,
would look at-
wait.
Oh, wait, go ahead.
Daddy also wanted to make money, the $50 Daddy, my husband,
Okay.
your father,
All right.
he'd get $50 a month, and that's what our rent was for the apartment. And he didn't want me to stay with Mom and Dad. He wanted me to keep our apartment, so the kids would have a routine and everything. And I felt that way too, because otherwise, now when sometimes we were going away and Mom and Dad would take care of the kids, Daddy wasn't home from work yet. My father wasn't home from work yet. When he'd get home, he couldn't stay away from the kids. He'd go right into the bedroom and he'd pick up one and pick up the other, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and figuring out what to give him to eat, to keep him awake. Well, I didn't want that. I wanted a routine for them. I wanted a routine for them, and we kept the apartment, but Al didn't get any money. Dad didn't get any money because there was nothing left, And I got the $50 that I never saw, And I figured, wait a second, I'm using up the little that we have, saved. And I thought, what can I do? I can knit. I can crochet. And Marshall Fields had just opened, had started something, purses that were crocheted in all kinds of forms and with all kinds of finding, the zippers with the beautiful pulls, the handles, beautiful thing. And I don't remember which girlfriend it was that said, "Bea, you could make those. Why don't you try it?" I says, "But it'll cost money to get it." She says, "It's worth it. Try it. You'll try it." So I did. There was one that was like a butterfly, and it was so beautiful, and I thought, for sure, I'll never be able to make it. And I started to work on it with corday, and the wings came out, down, and then on the bottom, and you had a decrease and increase and everything. And one after the other, I made such beautiful ones. Each time I went for something a little harder, and my cousins were buying them. Like my cousin Catherine, my cousin Julia, and Yara, whose husband had a furniture store that had 4 other stores besides that belonged to them. Yara would go to Marshall Fields in Chicago, and she'd buy 3 of them. One in black, and one in navy, and one in burgundy. 3 of them. And my other cousins, Catherine and Julia, they weren't going to be outdone, so they wanted to get some. My mother mentioned what I was doing. So my cousin Catherine says, "Bea, would you show us what you're making?" Well, I showed them what I was making, and I didn't charge them no $350 or $500 for those bags. I charged them $100 for those bags. It cost me all of $10 for all the equipment that I bought for each bag, and put it all together with the lucite handles, with the lucite pulls, initials, on the pull I'd have. They were beautiful. And I could hardly keep up with them. I made them for... Do you remember Tantani? No.
We remember
Mama.
Tantani.
Yeah. You remember Tantani, honey? Yeah. That was my mother's sister. And she was always, special to me. She was so great. She was such a good lady. So I made one for her, and she just busted out crying. She says, "It's better that you should sell this. Sell it and make the money." She says, "I don't want to take this." I says, "It's a present. It's a present. I got such a good auntie. It's a present." Finally, she took it. But she used to come and take care of the kids. And there was another Aunt Rose. Remember Aunt Rose and Uncle Harry? Do you remember them?
I remember Bubby Rose.
No, that's much older. This is Aunt Rose was Dad's oldest sister.
What would I remember about her? What do we know about her? Did she come over?
She used to live right there where we lived on Walton and there above the grocery store on the 3rd floor. Well, anyway, this was her children and daughter-in-laws, they were buying these things, and they were telling their friends about it, and other cousins heard about it, so they were ordering. So I had the money, and Daddy was selling his beer. He never liked beer, so he was selling his beer.
Sadie was making beer and selling beer.
The beer rations that he got, the bill rations that he got from the Army while he was in the Army.
Oh, Dad, our dad.
Our dad. Yeah. So he was.
Can't tell the players without a program.
He was selling his beer, and he was making, getting some money, so he'd have some money. And with that going on and all, when he came home, I had $4,000 saved up, and he was so excited and everything. He's going into business for himself. And he wanted to go into business and, something outdoors, he thought, no. And so he was taking an egg route. And he bought a truck. It was a real oldie, and we were running into problems with it. But Daddy did wonderful with getting customers. It started out with eggs. Then he got, someone suggested he go to one of the kosher salami places, where they have the salamis and they have other things, that he could sell. He got that, and he'd get customers that wanted one of these big salamis, one every week, like Auntie Nettie's Herald, how he used to eat that. So he delivered that to them. And the truck broke down and needed a lot of money to fix it and everything, and Daddy was so disheartened he didn't go out on the truck. The truck decayed, and that's when he got the job with Phil Bernstein. Yeah. And he started with the furniture business. And eventually we ended up in that business for ourselves. Yeah. And we were in it for 15 years.
When he was 15,
on our own.
Started.
We did very well. We bought our own store, and we bought this home here, and we were able to pay cash for it. And it was a lot different than what we went through when we just got married or when Daddy was in the service. It was a wonderful life.
When you were able to buy the house in Kenmore. How did that happen? You were still working for Uncle Phil. We were in Kensington Village, and you were able
Daddy, this is what happened was that Phil wanted Daddy to take over the store in Buffalo. And Daddy says, and he remembered what it was like in Chicago. A lot of the salesmen that were supposed to be star salesmen would take and put a $5 bill into the treasury, at night and say they made a sale. They'd write up a sale for maybe $200-300, and they'd get commission on the $300 sale and have that $5 deposit that nobody even knew of that person. They had just given them $5, and they were getting maybe $25 as a commission.
This was a scam?
It was a scam. It was a scam. Well, Daddy was seeing this happening all the time, and he never wanted any part of it. They tried to talk him into it. They felt they'd be safer if he did it too. He never went into that. He says, I'll do it the right way. When he came to Buffalo, he decided, and Phil, they were negotiating what they were going to do, what the salary would be, having to take you kids out of school and everything else. He says, Phil's thinking, well, a salary, how much can I pay you? I can't do too much and all that. So Dad says, I don't want a salary. I want no part of a salary. I want to be paid for making a sale and delivering that merchandise of the sale. And when that's completed, that's when I get the money for it. But what I earn is what I want to be paid for. And Phil agreed to that. And it just set a fire under Daddy. He really went at it. And then we got our star salesman, our star. He was our star. He was the greatest, really. And Daddy wanted him to come with us all the time to the furniture shows. He had such good ideas, what we should buy and everything. He did it. He helped us. We had some nice gatherings from the business. And Mark was always part of it.
What year would that be, Mark? What year?
Well, when did you open the store? 69 or 70 or something like that?
Something like that.
He was
I still have.
51, so it would have been
I still have the invitations, Mark. I still have the invitations that we had printed. And we were supposed to open March 17th, watch for our opening, and March 1st we had, we didn't have that kind of money to buy. The store was a double store, it was a Western Autos place. So it was so big, Well, you have to have merchandise to put in it. And when you open, we always felt there should be a lot in there, not a couple of things that it looks like a poor little place they're going to go defunct. So Al had been working for Phil for a long time at that time, our other boss. And he told him we were going to go into the business. He wouldn't believe him, that he was. But Dad says, I'm going, that's it. And he spoke to the the manufacturers that made the different sets, dinette sets and kitchen sets, and they all gave him 90 and 30-day credit to start with, so he could get started and send out merchandise to us. And by the 1st of March, we had so much on the floor, they were shipping us whole carloads, these truckloads of furniture, and we had 2 young kids that Al hired originally just to sweep and to unload trucks for us. He hired them, and they would assemble these sets with Mark would help, and we had a delivery man, and we started the business. And it did wonderfully. And that's how we were able to get this house, and we were able to do these different, in Indianapolis.
I didn't understand
Buffalo.
how we got the house in Kenmore.
In
Kenmore.
Kenmore.
You were definitely working for Phil then. That was
Yes.
way before
Yes.
that was in
around
1950. Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, we were working.
54,
we were working
55.
for Phil, but we didn't pay cash for that house.
I know,
That
the
house.
finance.
Remember, we had the. Do you remember when we had the mortgage burning? Helen was over, and the Dolmans, and
The mortgage burning must have been when I was out of the house already.
Yes,
I was
yes.
out of the house in 60.
Oh
So
no,
we
this
must
is
have had the
that.
house in 54 because I was in junior high. And Rana was born there.
58. Yes.
58.
So 58, I would have been.
You were
born
16
there.
when
15.
Ronnie was born, and Ronnie was just an infant when we moved into the house.
No.
Rana wasn't born yet.
What?
Rana wasn't born
I
yet.
mean, when Rana came to that house, she was real little,
I was born.
or
She
wasn't
was
even born.
there. Yeah.
So we paid our down payment. Daddy insisted that we have some upgrades in the house and all, but they did a beautiful job
And
on
we
that
had
house.
The first tree.
What,
On
honey?
the street. We had the first tree on the street. Remember the silver leaf maple, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
And what about the weapons that got paneled into the basement?
Yeah, the Philippine swords and spears.
Oh,
Yeah,
behind the
souvenirs.
wood paneling. My Al sent home a sword. Was it? No, it wasn't a sword. It was a spear. It was a spear. It was gorgeous, and he usually the higher ups would send the young fellows out to buy or get whatever they could from the Japanese to get, or the Philippines, to get these things to send home back to the state. Well, Al didn't want to cut it up, and when he got a bamboo tree, he cut it a little longer than the spear itself, and he wired it so it should stay together, and he fixed it on top and on the bottom, but it was taller than what they accept. It was a little taller by inches. Well, they wouldn't take it. Well, he kept trying, and finally someone accepted it, and he sent it home. And it took something like 6.5 months to arrive to Chicago.
Buffalo.
And it looked so battered, the outside, it's the bamboo wood of a young bamboo tree. And it looked dirty and all marked up and all. So finally, and wired all around and all. So I had someone help me open up that thing. And we looked at it. And when I looked at it, the work, the handwork that was done on it, around the bottom of the metal spear on the wood, and at the point on the bottom, where they hit it into the ground as they were marching or walking. It was just a masterpiece.
So
I said,
why did you hide it in the wall?
I can't leave this in this house. I've got 2 little boys one little boy that'll grow up and he'll be curious, and if he gets his hands on this, he's going to get hurt. What should I do? So when I didn't open it until Al got home. Remember, I didn't touch it until, expose it to anybody. And we put it, when they were doing the basement, putting in all new paneling, putting on new paneling and doing nice things to that room.
Do you remember?
No.
And we put that thing behind the paneling, and it's still there. We forgot all about it, honey, and we left, and it's still behind that paneling.
Come on, let's go get it.
Unless they've remodeled and gotten a surprise.
Well, as each thing has been remodeled, they keep writing to me and telling me. I hear from them every year.
Oh, nice.
Someone told me that she was divorced, but she never mentioned it to me. But she writes to me every
Oh,
year,
nice.
and I write back. Just for
I got a
Christmas.
question.
Huh?
Somewhere I remember that one of the Zadys did car mechanic work. Was that your dad?
What?
That was Dad's dad.
That was Avner.
That
Tank?
was Dad's dad.
Tank?
Car mechanic.
Cars.
Worked on cars.
Yeah.
Bea Avner.
Oh, Zadie Avner. Trucks.
Did he also work on Al Capone's car? I remember.
No. He had one of these Dixie Flyer cars that was a real hot number car at that time. And he got it, and he fixed it all up. He was a real mechanic. But he used to take care of these hoodlums from that area that they were living in. It was really pretty bad, but the rent was cheap. So, with 5 kids, and they had, hadn't gotten there too long before that. So he was taking care of their cars.
So that could have been Al Capone.
It could have been Al Capone or anybody, any of those guys. He mentioned somebody's name.
What area, Mom? What area of Chicago was
Do you know where on Ashland and Chicago where Goldblatt was? No. Well, see, it was the northwest side, and and off from that street there was such slums, and low housing, and it was bad area. But thank God they managed to take care of them and watch the children. But anyway, these men...
Would that be above Clark Street?
Huh?
Would that be above Clark Street?
No. Clark Street was closer to downtown. This is more into the city, honey. And they used to say, don't touch Dixie Flyer's house or his daughters, because he had 3 daughters. And he had to be away to work to make money. His wife was gone, and one little guy was Phil was about 4 years old, Al's younger brother, 4 or 5 years old. It was a rough time for them. But just doing that and taking care of their automobiles, he felt they were safe. And finally he was able to find an apartment in a better area. Maybe you know the area later that he went into, near Humboldt Park, but on the other side of it, near Hirsch, what other streets were there? Lowell School was there.
Oh, yeah.
Lowell.
Yeah.
That's what they had there. That was a nice area.
Yeah, hard to imagine then because I've seen it.
And he used to walk 3 miles or more across the park to come and visit me, see me.
About
He
Dad
did?
and Uncle Phil.
Yeah.
Are you listening to this?
What?
Your dad would walk
Daddy.
across from the one end of the other side of Humboldt Park all the way across.
All the way across.
into
To
this
visit you?
neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well,
So
sure.
at night, he'd be walking up and back.
When he wasn't hanging.
Oh
playing
yeah,
monkey.
and then what did he do with the awnings and
Oh.
dancing and all that stuff?
That was the first day I met him. That was May 2nd. May 2nd. My girlfriends wrote a song about it. Oh, that was a cute song. But these people were a tenant of my mom and dad's. They had their a 6-apartment house. And these people that went to school with me, the girl went to school with me. We finally met when we got older because they left our house when she was about 7 or 8, the girl. Now we were going to Thule High School, and we met again, and they kept saying, and the boys at Thule, B, hurry up and eat up. We got to go dance. This guy is playing the piano. Hurry up so we can go dance. And down in the basement, they'd have the piano in one of the rooms there. It was like, it wasn't even finished, the floor. It was just a stone floor. And we danced if we had time, before the bell rang. And they'd rush me with my food. They'd go and they'd help themselves to my French fries. If I got a nickel, then I'd buy French fries and we'd all eat. But and then we danced. Well, this girl, Sarah Hammond, would see me dancing, and the other girls, none of them knew how to dance. And I kept hearing, oh, you've got to come over to our house. You've got to meet one of our friends. He's such a wonderful dancer, and he's such a nice boy. You got to meet Al. Yeah. I was more interested in being with Sarah and her friends, Well, anyway, I finally, one day, when we were going to have the spring vacation. It was May 2nd was the first day, then it started. It was a Saturday. And I went and I asked Mom, I says, Mom, can I go to Sarah Willinetz's house? She invited me, and she's got a lot of nice friends. So
Wait,
would you?
Come out, let him put it in your tape.
He's going to
Oh,
turn the
God,
tape over
I've
to
been
this tape.
talking too
No,
much.
we're ready for the story.
just
But
Okay, we want the whole story.
Oh, yeah.
We met this girl. She was a redhead, and you became friends with her. And her father was from her mother was from New York City, and the father was from Chicago. And you said, "Oh, my parents are from Chicago." And she went and mentioned it to her parents, and it turned out, says, "Bea Avner, I used to carry her books home from school before you met Dad." And you knew who the boy was. This was 30, 40 years ago.
Was this a musician by any chance?
I don't know. You don't know.
Who used to carry your books home
He
from
says
school,
he used to
Mom?
carry your books home from school. It must have been before you met Dad.
That was Billy Firestein's.
Could be.
Billy Firestein. He used to get his bicycle, and he'd get home he went to Lane High School, a boys' school. He was such a brain. That kid. He would get home, run and get his bike, and be waiting for me on California Avenue there. So when I'd be walking by, he'd tell me to get on the bike, and he'd drive me home on his bike. Then I was telling him that I know Al, and he's so nice and everything. And he says, I've been telling my brother-in-law about Al and about you. And his brother-in-law was Baskin, was his last name. He was a big lawyer in Chicago. He said, I've been telling my brother-in-law about you. And he says, Bill, if you feel so strongly about Bea, fight for her. Fight, I mean, it's a fight, I says, what are you talking about, Bill? He says, well, he felt I shouldn't just lay back and talk about it and feel lonely for you, that I should see if you feel that way about me too. I says, I have no way of knowing. I know Al is a very nice man. And the next time that he's going to be over, I'm going to, we have a get-together. I'll have you come over too. He says, okay. And this is, we're in high school, Well, do you want to know something? They became the best buddies. Every time someone was interested in me and they'd get to know Al, the two of them would be the best buddies. It was really wonderful. We'd have all new friends, but it was still my Al. It was still my Al.
Let's go back to the story.
Yeah.
Meeting Al when you first met him.
So you go to Sarah Wolinitz's house.
What?
You asked
that,
your
when you met
mom
Al.
if you could go to Sarah Wolinitz's house.
So she said I could go, and it was a Saturday morning. That was the first day of our vacation. And I got there, and I come up to the store. It was like ice cream and soda and bread and lox and all kinds of food, a little of everything they had. And they're like a little deli, And they lived up on the third floor above the store. And we were standing around the store. And as I come up to the store, I see this guy is holding onto the awning with his hands like this. His feet, the awning is open, and his hands on the awning thing on the metal, and his feet are around the awning at the other length of him, and he's going up and back along that length of the awning. And the other things they were doing, it was just, showing off, showing, and it was just such a nice feeling, seeing all these kids and all of them being together. It was really a lovely, lovely morning. We had such a nice time. They had pennies. They'd put it down on the sidewalk and try and get the penny to shoot over to the other side, and then that person would lose, and it was like a tournament, and they were keeping score who got the most, score, and it was really fun to watch that, and they were acting silly and cute and everything, and then Bernie Safer's mother called and said they should come for the lunch. And he says, well, I got all my friends. They called to the store, and they lived just half a block from the store. He says, I got all my friends here. I don't want to leave. He says, have your friends come too. Have them come. We'll have everything. We'll have something for everybody. So we come there. And she had made all kinds of sandwiches and drinks and everything. And we sat and we ate and talked in the dining room. We had a real nice time. Then Bernie's sister, Pearl, asked her mother, and Pearl wore my wedding gown. Oh. She was one of the brides that wore my wedding gown. And Pearl asked her mother if we could dance. So her mother says, well, sure, Bernie. Roll up the carpet. At that time, nobody had carpeting wall to wall, there. So he rolled up the carpet, and we all started to dance. Well, that was the end. The beginning of the end. Dad wouldn't let me go the whole time we were dancing. I got so soaked, we'd go out, and we'd walk a while, we'd come back, and we'd start dancing again. And he was wonderful. He was a wonderful dancer. And we had a wonderful day. And then it was getting dark already, and here we had to go back home. I says, I have to go back home soon, and I better say my goodbyes. So they asked where I lived, so I told them, and they made nothing of it. They made nothing of it. Oh, that's close by. We'll walk you home. We'll walk you home. Well, 10 of us took off, and they're walking me home. 10 of us took going home. And it was just so much fun. People must have thought that there was a riot going on. We were making so much noise as we were walking along. This is much fun for me talking about this. It's bringing it all back as I'm talking. And we got home, and Mom and Dad, they were both on the colonial porch looking. They were worried already. And I came in, and they says, "Where were you?" So I told them, at the Wildernesses and that Bernie Safer's house, and we had lunch there. And Mom, could we dance here? He says, "Sure, tell the boys to roll up the carpet, and you can dance here." And they were very well. The only one that was dancing was me and Al and one other boy, and he could hardly dance, but the two couples were dancing. I had so much fun, and Mom kept bringing out all kinds of sandwiches and all kinds of trays of cookies that she had just baked, and the drinks for us and everything. You're so. I was going to say to them, you're so verschwitzt. Take a break. That means you're all sweated up. Yeah. Just take it and relax a little bit. I was soaked. I was really soaked. But we had such a wonderful time. And In the Mood was one of the big songs then. Yeah. And what happened was when we had the engagement party, Dad got me the In the Mood record and Stardust. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was our song. It was great.
How long did you know each other?
I met Dad May 2nd, and May 2nd. I was 14. It was just before before I was 15. My birthday's in June. It was May 2nd, and
so you got
19. Wait, May 2nd. So how many years old was I? I was...
you said you were 14.
14. So if I was 14, I knew Dad from 1420 to 1921. So I was 14 years, and until 1997.
No. How long did you know him before you got married?
I thought how long? I was 18 when we were engaged.
So 4 years.
So it was 4 years.
And you were 20 when you got married?
Yes. And Daddy wasn't 20. It wasn't 21 yet either. That's another thing. That was so sweet, honest to God. It was talking about it. You just can't get it really, the feeling of it. We were both 20 years old, and we wanted to get married, and we had to get a license. We had to go downtown for it, and you had to have a witness. So I couldn't ask Mom to go with us or to ask Dad with us. Downtown, and you got to, to the judge and everything. You had to go there. So Zadie Avner said, "I'll take the day off and we'll go downtown, and I'll go with you." And Dad must have asked him, because he came. He says, "My father said he'll go with us," and he told Mom that he was going to go with us.
This is just to get the license.
Yeah, just to get the license. And we went and we got the license, and Zadie said, as long as we're down here already, I want to take you to lunch. And there was a place downtown in Chicago. It was called the WWII. It was the most sought-after restaurant. And it had, it was a deli, but it was the whole first floor of a hotel. And the table had sour tomatoes, the green tomatoes, and the pickles, and the sauerkraut, and everything you can imagine was there to help yourself, you know. And we had lunch there. It was really great. Then we must have been there for about 3 years, 3 months, 3 hours. And finally I got a chance. It must have been about 3 hours that we were there. We were talking and discussing. And, you know, Zadie never talked too much, but he was talking. And then what happened was he says, well, as long as we're downtown, he says, want to go to see the newsreels. He loved to go to the Chicago Theater and see the newsreels. And then after that was vaudeville. Some of the very best actors came in there. So he took us to the movies there, and then we saw the vaudeville, and you know, the whole thing was that. It was a beautiful day.
Didn't he also take you when Dad was in the Army? Didn't he like take you once a week or something? He'd come over.
He'd ask Mama every so often. He'd ask, "Would you let the child go with me to the movies? She doesn't do anything. Would you?" Would it be too much to ask if, you know, you'd watch them? And Mom always said yes. You know, she could. I could go. You know. So he'd come and get me. And we'd get on the streetcar and we'd go. Because he didn't have a car then.
And he took me and Barry to see, I think, the War of the Worlds, or the Day the Earth Stood Still.
I didn't hear you.
Didn't he take me and Barry to go see The Day the Earth Stood Still, or The War of the Worlds? I mean, he took us to science fiction movies, and I remember he took us to a roller coaster. We went to some kind of fun park.
Oh, that was the whole family with Auntie Esther and Uncle Sal and Auntie Jean and Uncle Manny. It was a Sunday. And you went on a pony, and the pony started to jump up and down and threw you off the horse. And the horse jumped on her back. And Mark was just a little baby yet. He was using a bottle.
That was Barry.
Huh?
That was Barry.
It was Barry? Barry, right. And he was still with the bottle, you know, and they couldn't find the bottle. And they gave her penicillin because it broke the skin, and she was allergic to the penicillin. So they had to keep giving her anti something to fight the reaction. And therefore, we were there about 3 or 4 hours in the hospital. And here Barry was hungry for milk, hungry for water, had no bottle, nothing. Finally, they got a paper cup with a little water, and they were feeding him out of a paper cup. And T. Esther was so angry with me, but when I told her what happened, she felt differently, and she saw her back. The whole paw print of the pony was on her back. And when they gave her that penicillin, it all became like little red pimples all around it. It was such a mess. They were afraid to let her go until they had it under control. So they finally got a little better, and she was able to go back.
I think I was 3.
What, honey?
Was I 3?
Barry was so young, I bet.
It must have been about 3, honey.
I don't remember anything about the penicillin, but what I actually remember is the feeling of the cold metal table that they put me in.
That was in the hospital.
No. I remember the incident. I thought I was in a clinic or something with the cold metal table. But the time with Zadie Avner in the in the roller coaster was a different.
He used to
I
love
was
to
old
take
enough,
you.
He did, and you could see he was excited, but his mouth was totally tightly clenched because he was afraid that his false teeth would fly out. He was a fun guy.
See, I don't remember any of that.
Oh, well, you were. This was Chicago, so you weren't
Yeah.
either weren't born or you.
Well, I remember Miami.
Oh, see, now I never got to do that. That was you.
Yeah.
I got to go there all the
Yeah.
time.
He was
I don't remember any
quieter.
personality.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
I remember him being nice, but I don't remember
Yeah.
any.
At
incidents of
that
personality.
time, it wasn't. It wasn't,
Okay.
honey.
Before that,
But
it was.
anytime that there was any kind of a problem or any kind of like an emergency, he was there, the first one. He was there, the first one.
That's good.
He was such a good soul.
That's good. I was wondering.
And those beautiful cheesecakes he used to bring every time that Daddy got a furlough or came home from the service. He'd bring over a cheesecake on Sunday, you know. And all my sister-in-laws would come over with their husbands or boyfriends, and they'd be at our house. We'd go in the park, or your birthday party. Remember, we had the birthday parties in Humboldt Park for you.
I love
And
Humboldt Park.
all the Avners would come.
I don't really remember. But I remember Sunday mornings at Auntie Esther's with the lox and the smoked fish and the bagels and everything.
She's so mammoth.
Visitor
Oh.
when you lived there.
I bet it was visiting.
Because
bet it was only go back. Do you
remember that
Yeah.
when we would go visit and stay at their
Always
house.
such a spread.
The bagels and the cheese
That house is beautiful.
Yeah,
Wilmette.
and Wilmette, yes.
Wilmette is on there.
Ribbon.
Yes!
Oh.
One of my few little memories of Chicago.
Isn't
Really, I
Buffalo?
mean, I remember this. I remember the apartment vaguely. I just remember it in real. I have a picture of like an old movie
Yeah.
with the little old upstairs and downstairs.
Waterfall
I remember
furniture
the-
from the 20s.
I don't remember it inside, but I remember the what do you call it? The lightning bugs, or not
The
lightning.
light, yes, the lightning,
Lightning
the
bug-
fireflies.
Flies.
Yeah.
Firefly.
Fireflies. We used to get them and put them into a bottle.
Jars.
Yeah.
And Michael Goodman.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all
Oh,
of
they
them.
love it.
I watched a movie the other day, and in the movie they talked about, I remember being young and putting the fireflies in the bottle, and that was my memory of youth and blah, 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 and they'd be gone in the morning. But, you know, it was it was like my exact memories of
Yeah.
having that bottle and watching them light up and being
Yeah. That's
blown
great.
away by it.
You guys would worry about not having food, so you take grass and put
Yeah,
it
with
in.
grass and
Yeah.
Holes in the top
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
Yeah.
so you can breathe.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Those are fun little memories.
But Mark and I used to fight over the gribbon.
The Gribbinus in Chicago?
No, in
What, honey?
In
I
Buffalo.
used to make ribbon.
Mom, you
Yeah,
used to make
Yeah,
Gribbinus?
you used to make gribbinus.
And one is hollering, I want the onions, and the other one says, I want the gribbinus. And you'd be running through the hallways, running up to the house because they smelled it, you know, that I was rendering the fat.
Gribina is 100% cholesterol.
It's the chicken
Fried
fat
chicken
that,
fat.
and you cut it up with onion, you know, and then you cook it, you know, and render, and it becomes brown and crusty, and oh, they loved it. And there was a means of cooking things, you know, if you were going to fry something, or if you made mashed potatoes, you put in some of that chicken fat,
Mark,
and
how
oh, it
about
was so
something
good.
What do you think we should do about dinner?
Why don't we pause it? We could
Yeah.
shoot that on you.
Well,
Start.
in Florida, I thought he'd be. Oh, be careful of the glass. Don't hurt yourself or spill yourself.
Maybe.
Okay.
Be better
All right,
if
go
you
sit
came
down.
over or no? Doesn't matter? No. Okay. I would like to get a picture of the Avner women. Do
Well,
so.
we're kind of spread out,
You
and
are.
we don't want Mom to have to get
All right,
up
I'll get a
again.
separate picture further. I'd like to get the camera out. All right, you're darker.
Maybe we should do this later.
Well, stop. Man, I want to interrupt.
Okay.
Get one of our cameramen.
Go again.
So,
Okay.
Mom, you were saying,
I was saying
talking about what Zadie was like in Florida.
that
First came.
you were saying that Zadie, was more friendly or more with the family during in Buffalo. Is
Well,
that
in
Chicago?
Chicago,
I mean,
He would do fun things with us, like go to an amusement park and go on
oh,
roller coasters and take us to movies.
That's true.
But what was he like when he first went to Florida and then later on?
well, when he went to Florida, at first when he went to Florida, he used to send back the most beautiful gifts for you and Barry. Such gorgeous gifts that he'd buy in Florida.
Like what?
Oh, these little outfits. Everybody asked me, where did you ever find this? What store did you go to? And he'd pick out these beautiful clothes for you and just send it to me. And we couldn't even find them in Buffalo. In Buffalo, yeah. And then for Rana, she was older already, and he loved it when she used to do these somersaults and roll down hills and all that. Oh, he just loved that stuff.
And we went to Parrot Jungle, and we
Oh,
had
yeah.
on us. Yeah.
All the
You and Barry and Mark.
Yes.
yeah.
What did you do? Take them all out of school or just for winter vacation?
This would be on vacation times, honey. Either vacation summer or vacation like spring vacation.
Mark and me.
You and Mark.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but about these sisters, he wanted to bring his other sister, but he was afraid to do it because
Wait. Talk of it. This is about his sister back in
in
Poland?
in Warsaw, yeah, in Poland, and he was here, but none of his family was here.
And he had promised to bring her, right?
Oh, and yeah, he was supposed to bring her. He had the money, but he was afraid to do it because they might trace it to when they find out that Avner sent the money. He's still alive. Maybe we can get him because
so what did they want to get him for? What had he done?
Well, they had been in the underground. He and Dave, the one that Dad gave the money to get his sister. I think it was an older sister or a younger sister. I'm not sure. To bring her to America, but Dave liked the other Molly. So instead of bringing the one that Daddy gave him the money for, he went and he sent for Molly instead.
Was Molly also a sister?
Yes.
Or not
It was
the right
two
one?
sisters, but this is the one that he wanted. He said he kept seeing her in Florida.
Was she the younger one?
Later
the
on,
younger
when
one?
he was retired, he says that he saw her in Florida, and she was, swearing at him. Why did he do that to her? Why didn't he do what he promised to send her, to America? She had to wait all this time.
So was it
And
was
his-
he really there, or was that just a
What, honey?
Hallucination.
that was a hallucination of his?
Well, the girls thought it wasn't a hallucination, but when I spoke to Esther the last time, she says it was so,
What?
that he had seen her. She had gotten to America.
I don't believe it.
And I says, well, why did you say that, it was a story that that she didn't get here. He says, well, he kept saying that he saw her. Why would he lie and say that she got here if she didn't?
Because he was hallucinating.
Was Molly the younger one?
Molly was the older one, and I think and this other sister, I guess, was like a favorite or in more danger or something to get her out of Poland.
What about his mother? Do we know anything about his mother?
Nothing. We knew nothing about his mother, nothing about his father, nothing about his youth, nothing.
Just that he was in the underground.
I don't even know what that means. What did he do in the underground?
They were fighting against the Germans when they
The
found.
No.
Russians. It was
No,
the
no.
Russians, to try and get the Russians out of Poland.
Is that what the Russians?
Yeah.
I thought it was the
No,
Germans.
because he was
Later.
he was in the Tsar's army.
Yeah, and he loved it. He liked it.
And that was and he was very persecuted during that time by the fellow soldiers
For being Jewish?
for being Jewish.
Oh,
So where
sure.
did you hear that, Ron?
I was at his funeral. I was at and all the siblings got
Talked?
together and talked.
Wow.
So that was a very precious time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they told me about him. He loved to be outdoors, and so
Oh.
they would.
He used to sleep outdoors and get covered with snow.
Yeah, he would sleep on a hammock on their porch, and they'd brush him off and call him in for dinner. But yeah, this was the story as it was told at that time. That was when I was 13 or so. He was in the underground, came home on leave, saw one of his buddies who was also in the underground hung in the city square, went to his girlfriend, and she knew, like you might say, saw the writing on the wall, and had booked passage for them on a ship.
Yeah, they
But
had the
single
green
men could not
pen
leave.
from Hayas.
So they had to get married in order for him to leave the country. And so she had it all figured out, and they got married so that they could leave.
But they didn't stay together.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was
She
Yeah,
only
that was
only
Bobby
lived
Butcher.
to 35 years old. She was only
Oh,
30.
that's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
connected.
She was the chicken
Yeah,
soup
gotcha.
accident.
Gotcha.
Yes.
What, honey?
She was the one who had the
Who
chicken
burned
soup
herself.
accident.
who was burned.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
One thing that Dad felt very ashamed about was that she would have him come with her when they had no fuel to cook with, and they would follow the train tracks and
Yeah.
in his
And
little
pick
red
up
wagon.
coal.
And he didn't
Yeah.
like to go and do that.
But he also that he didn't get to go to Hebrew school
He what?
because Zadie was afraid that that they would find out that he's Jewish.
Yeah, he really wanted to assimilate.
Yeah.
He didn't want anybody to. The girls were in Hebrew school. They
Yeah,
loved
and I
it.
didn't understand why.
None
they
of
were
the
allowed
girls
to.
went. Just
They went, and then he came in, saw them there, and pulled them out. Or what is your understanding?
the girls. They never went. But you know, Dad, Bubby felt that he was the first boy. He should be enrolled in temple. So she brought him to Hebrew school and enrolled him. And Dad came home and says, "Where is Sander?" And she says, she took him to he went to the Hebrew school and pulled him out. And he says, "My feet didn't touch the ground." And he brought me home and never to go back. He told him never to go back because he figured that if they find out that a sender's, how would they find out? You know, it was so unlikely.
It was fear.
They might
So
have,
he
you know.
was fear-based from the beginning.
But he had that fear of it,
Yeah.
and none of the girls or any of them had a Hebrew thing. And when Daddy started, agreed, that you kids could go to Hebrew school and stuff, Zadie was very upset about it. But he never told us about it. And then when you started going and you had such nice things, and when you won the contest, I called and I told him about it. And he says, that's nice, And then, he would talk about it. So Esther enrolled her kids. The girls went to Hebrew school, but they didn't like it too much. But but he didn't say anything. He'd stop it or anything.
David wants to know what contest.
Oh, a contest where your contest. Gloria and other children. She went to the arbitrary show. It was a.
This was in Chicago.
This was in Chicago. She was a little girl yet. She was about 9, 8, something like that.
Probably.
About 8 years old, and they had a spell down in Hebrew or in Jewish, either way, and it was from the first grade in Hebrew, like 6 years old, to 12 or 13 years old, when they graduated.
6 or 7, I was really
and she was in. They chose her. Her teacher chose her to be in it, and when she was in it, she won over the 12 and 13-year-old, and she was so little at that time. She was a little mite.
I actually remember the word that stumped me.
Yeah, what was
I
it?
don't think I won. I think I came in second because
And you got that beautiful menorah.
I got something, but it was the word for frog, or it was a word with a s sound in it. And of course it was a tzadi, but I was really tired and I couldn't put it together, so I thought it was a tet and a samach, or a taf and a samach, and that was the word I
So you were about 8.
misspelled.
and this-
I was about
and
6
you-
or 7.
And you think you got second prize and you
Yeah,
got menorah?
that's what I think.
Are you sure, or was that in that other thing when you won the 5 books of Moses?
I don't remember that.
Do you
at all.
remember that? That's what you were older than that.
Was
You
that
were also in
from
a
the
contest, and you won the contest. I don't know if that might have been the second prize because you were older then.
In
But
Chicago?
what was the contest about?
Spelling,
Spelling? Oh, okay. That one I
spelling
don't
also.
remember.
No, that wasn't in Chicago. That was in Buffalo.
The only contests I remember in Buffalo were B'nai B'rith.
No, but they
Oratory and
never had
storytelling.
with Hebrew.
No, never.
Nothing with Hebrew.
What did you do with storytelling?
What?
In B'nai B'rith Girls? Were you in B'nai B'rith Girls?
Uh-huh.
So you remember how we had chapters,
Yeah.
and then there was regional, and then there was district, just like what Steve went
Yeah.
to. So
She was the
in B'nai B'rith,
sweetheart.
You had the 7 folds. Anyway, so at conventions, we would prepare to do these things. So I still remember the story. The story was called The 3 Who Ate. So I told the story in the chapter, and I won the chapter storyteller prize.
Uh-huh.
Then we went to Toronto for the regional contest, and
I think that's her.
I don't remember whether I won that or came in second, and maybe went to district.
That's
I
when it
don't
was.
remember. Is that what it was?
Because that 5 books of Moses, you never would have won in being 7 years old or 6 years
No.
old.
So I
See.
was a freshman or a sophomore. Then the next year, I wanted to try out for the oratory prize. So again, it was like Steve.
Uh-huh.
You prepared a speech on a topic, and I can't remember the name of the topic, and then you take a topic out of a hat
Uh-huh.
right there and go in a room for 15 or 20 minutes and come back and present that. So it's really extemporaneous. And I won that one. So those are the only things I remember.
Cool.
That was cool. So meanwhile, where were we? Zadie Avner.
And you talked about him later in life being different from what he was when he was younger.
Well, this is what I remember. Going to Florida with friends of mine from Massachusetts. So this had to be in 1970 or 71. And we all went down. We did go as far as Miami because I wanted to see him, but we were going to some
Did you go to Miami
park. We were going to
Beach?
some park. But then we went to Miami Beach, and he was so tall and erect. It was just beautiful to walk with and watch. He had a roommate. He had a room and a roommate. And he didn't talk much. He was happy to be visited. But that's what I was trying to make heads and tails out of it. Because he was talking about these old friends of his and that he would see them and they would talk to him. And it seemed to me like paranoia.
Well, how old was he in 1970 or 71?
How old would Zadie have been in 71?
What, any?
How old would he be in 70?
In 1970? He was 92 when he died.
Was he?
I thought it was 86.
Is that right? You had gotten that information. See, Esther had told me one time that it was 90-something.
I don't remember that.
What year?
You know, Esther
He
Skolnick.
died when I was 13. So
So that would have
that
been.
would have been
71.
71.
So I must have seen him in 70. I think I saw him right before they took him out.
Okay.
Before they took him
Back
back
to
from.
Chicago.
Yeah. Because I know I saw him. And I think shortly after that they decided to bring him back. And shortly after that he died. He wasn't in Chicago very long.
No. But he did figure out how to escape.
He told him he wanted to go back then.
Back
He
when?
says, it's time for me to go back. He says, I gotta be here. He wanted to be back in Chicago.
Oh, he told them he wanted to.
He wanted to be back.
And who took care of him? Esther?
He was
He-
in the music
He
hall.
stayed.
I mean, who brought him back?
Esther went and got him back.
Esther and Saul?
And Esther, I don't know, I think Esther and one of the girls went
Faye.
and got him. Yeah.
Miss Faye would come and visit him.
Faye's father was there. You know, he used to stay at Faye's father's hotel.
You both said you wanted to know more.
He was the one that started Dad going to
Both of you said you wanted
California,
to talk more
to
about
Florida.
Tom. I don't know. The woman that smelled that you were talking about yesterday.
Oh,
Tantani. No, we don't
no,
want
it
to
was
talk more about her.
Bubby Rose.
Bubby Rose.
Yeah, because of her name.
Tell
Yeah.
us about Bubby Rose. Why did she love you so much and not the boys?
I don't know. I really don't know. She really, and yet she liked Uncle Sam's son, and she had nothing to do with Uncle Lou's sons either. Uncle Lou had 3 wonderful boys. You know, Uncle Lou, the one that used to go fishing all the time, lived with us for a while. Lived with Bubby for a while. And he used to take Marty and Perry fishing. They'd come back with these great big carps, you know, when we used to go to Fox River Heights. But she never liked the boys too well, but she did like Uncle Sam's son. And then the girls took a lot of bad feelings from her. I don't know why she was that way, because my sisters were real nice. But, and Marty, she used to think that he was, God knows, something wrong with him or something. And Marty was such a nice, meek
wouldn't give
young
them
man.
cookies.
She wouldn't give him, what?
She wouldn't give them cookies. She wouldn't give them cookies.
Cookies?
No cookies for them.
Oh, I don't remember that. But I know
what
she
did do
wasn't
with you?
nice, and she'd holler at them if we were, you know, what are we going to do there? You know, so we'd play in her backyard, and we'd find an old spoon. So we'd dig a little of the dirt and take the grass off of it, and that was celery or that was lettuce or something. and we'd pretend we were weighing it, and we'd put a string of green around it, of either a grass or a weed, and that was the bundle that they bought. We used to have such a good time there, and I enjoyed that. She'd come out and she'd holler at them because she saw the bare ground where we took off the green. Well, they took it so to heart, you know. And then she'd turn around and give me something, you know. So it was for a bad feeling.
But she had you stay over?
Oh, after Zadie died.
This is
Zadie Bera, the one that Barry's named after. He was a nice man, and he was a barber. And the home that they lived in, the front of it was a one-story place. In front of the building was a barber shop. And he had his barber shop there. It was real nice, you know, with 3 chairs, and they had the mirrors, the whole wall was mirrored. And then they had 3 steps that went up on one side, and there was a living quarters there, a living room, a dining room, 1 bedroom, a big kitchen, and a little front porch, and then the nice big backyard, you know. But they lived there, and when my grandfather died, my grandmother was, you know, kind of ornery. She didn't want to move, and they were afraid to leave her live alone there. You know, she was up in years. So she said she'd live there with somebody, if they got somebody to sleep with her. She didn't want them to be during the day, but someone just to sleep there. So they got one person after another for, maybe about 6 or 8 weeks. And it didn't work out. She never wanted them to come back. And finally, I guess she and my aunt, my mama's sister, they were talking to her, you know, and trying to get her to agree. She says, I like Bibula, she called me. I like Bibula. And if she'd come and stay with me, I would be happy. I don't want any of the women, but I want her to come and be with me. So I was going to high school at that time, and they thought, well, they'll ask me. But they must have known anything Mom and Dad would ask me, I'd go along with it, you know, especially for Bubby and all that. So I said I'd go. And then it worked out so nice. I was going to Thule High School, which was, I'd say about 5 blocks away from Bubby's house, where I had to walk 3.5 miles to Thule High School from our house to go to school. So they said, well, you could go to Bubby's at night, you'd have supper, and then you could go to Bubby's at night and sleep there. And in the morning you'd have breakfast, you'd have your books, you could do your homework at night, and you could go to school. On the weekends, I don't know what they did. Well, it was all right. During the day I had my time off. I didn't have to stay there. It was just at night I'd come in. But that's what we did. And I guess my sisters thought I was crazy staying there. But anyway.
How long did it last?
I think we had some summer vacation time already. So it maybe about a month or 2 months, maybe a little more, that's all. And I was going with Daddy. We were friends then, and sometimes Daddy would come over and he'd walk me to Bubby's house, and then he'd go home. We'd sit on the next door neighbor's porch, and we'd make love. He'd be kissing me, and then he'd leave, and then Mama thought it wasn't a good idea. I don't know. I wasn't feeling good. I had some kind of sickness, you know, and they got so worried when I'd get sick, you know. So they says I shouldn't stay there anymore. Bubby's got to get somebody. Well, she didn't get anybody, and she stayed by herself. Auntie Annie, my mom's sister, finally got her to go with her, to stay with her. Didn't last. So know what happened? They opened a dry goods store right across the street from the barber shop, from where Bubby lived. And being there all day long and knowing that they lived there so close to Bubby because they had living quarters behind their shop, their store too. So she was contented to stay there for a while by herself. Then she was staying by herself, and one day she called Bubby up, my mother, your Bubby. And she called her up and she says, Will you bring Barry over? So Mama says, and he was 5 years old then. He was going to school then, to kindergarten. She says, would you bring Barry over? I want to see him. So Mom called me. She says, Bubby just called. She wants to see us, and she'd like to know if it's all right if I bring Barry over. Maybe you could dress him. I'll have him back in time. We'll take a streetcar and I'll have him back in time to go to school. So I says, fine, just so he gets there in time to go to school. So they all went, and it was getting kind of close to the time, and Mom and Barry came in, and I was just giving him lunch, and Mom had just gone down to her house, and I get a call, and it's from Mom. She says, Bea, she says, I just got a phone call from a neighbor of Bubby's. Bubby is dying. There's like a fire engine, what do they call it?
An ambulance?
Rescue squad was there. And they were trying to bring her around, and she wants me to come back. They said if I want to see her, I should come now.
Wow.
So I says, okay, Mom, what should I do? I just said, do you want me to come with you? She says, no. She says, you get Barry to school, and you got to be here. I don't know how long I'll be. You got to be here when the other kids come home. So that's what I did. When Gloria had to come home, and sure enough, she came home later on and told us that she was dead. But the neighbors had come in, and they were talking to her and everything about it. And she says, we can't believe it. We can't believe it. Rose was out on the ladder, washing the windows on the outside. She climbed up on the ladder and was doing the windows in the backyard, from the kitchen and from the dining room. How could it have happened? So it was just like that. And another thing, just before they were leaving, she called Barry over, and she never gave the kids anything. Never gave them a gift of any kind or anything. Even a little, she had so many pretty little things, little trinkets, Mm-hmm. She called Barry over and gave him $1. And Mom says, what is that for? She says, I want him to have it. I want him to have the $1. My mom, took the $1 and put it in his pocket and brought him home and gave it to me. And she just had that feeling she wanted to see him. Mom should bring him early in the morning. She called him and wanted to see him. Like she was saying goodbye to my grandfather. Mm-hmm. Mm. But she was so to herself, The kids called her selfish, but it seemed like she didn't trust anybody that they really like her or anything. But she didn't react in a way that people would really like her. She was a strange person. Wouldn't let you take a picture of her. No way. She says if someone took a picture of her, she died the next day. It was her belief that she should never have a picture taken of herself.
So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, why did you name me after her?
Because I liked her so much. I liked her. I liked that woman, really. I don't know why, but she was so special to me. And I didn't show it in any special way, except whatever she wanted I would do, you know. But I just liked her. And I couldn't understand why she was bad to the other girls, you know. Or not caring with Barry and with Marty, you know. Made me feel kind of strange. But I liked her. And you certainly aren't like her. You certainly aren't like her. But what I wish she would have been like, that's what I would have wished. She was a little tiny lady. I don't think she was 5 feet tall.
Really?
And Zadie Berra was, he was talented. We had a picture of his that he made in Russia of a horseman on a horse, and the background was paper with little holes in it, and I guess it must have had tracing on it of a horse and a horseman, a saddle and all. And he had, with the yarn, gone through the holes and you know, made it was like a needle point, but the background was paper, and the wool, you know, was all different color. It was so beautiful. I would have loved that so.
Oh yeah.
Nobody ever got it. I liked it, and I asked Mom if I could get. She says everything's gone.
Who got rid of it?
No, who took it? Well, Auntie Annie. Tanny took all her things and brought it to her house.
And then what?
And then when Tanny died, Uncle Abram went to his sister, Mrs. Mandelbaum, and she took all that stuff and wouldn't let anybody have any of it. And Mom had told Uncle Abe that she would have liked that picture if, you know, if she could have it. If his sister has it, she'd like it. He says, nobody cared about me or about Annie, and he says they're not getting anything.
Wow. But you can't blame him, because they weren't like fully loved members of the family.
And they were always so good. If anything would happen, they never had children. Tanny never had children. And if anything ever happened to us, she was the one that was the first one there, and Uncle Abe were there to come and visit and bring things for us. And when I had the whooping cough, and Marty was just born, I had the whooping cough so bad, and Bubby started a cough. She came home from the hospital, and she started a cough. And the girls were starting to cough. So everybody started to say, you better have her go someplace else, because all of you are going to get sick. And I had it so strong. They just had little coughs, you know. But I'd get to the point where I couldn't catch my breath. I'd keep coughing until I couldn't catch my breath. Tanny and Uncle Abe came and took me. For 6 weeks, I was at their house, honey.
Wow.
I had that whooping cough for about 10 weeks, honey. And they had me for 6 weeks at their house and watched over me.
Do you guys know the story of Mom's original name?
That would be good to get.
What, honey?
Remember how they changed your name because you were so sick when you were little?
Oh, yeah.
You can tell that story.
Yeah.
When I was still nursing. I was still nursing for Mom. I was, and I got diphtheria. And at that time, especially little children never pulled out of it. And I was so sick with it, so they got a nurse in the house to come and help Mom take care of me and take care of her, take care of the other 2 kids already, and she had 2 little girls. And Mom would nurse me. That was the only time when I wasn't coughing. So the nurse said to my mom, you're coughing now. You're going to die too, she says, if you don't stop nursing that child, and you got to send her to the hospital. Well, like the hospital was the end of the world. You're sending her to the end of the world. And she says, no, I can't send her to the hospital. I got to, she says, but you're going to get sick. And then who's going to take care of your family? She says, whatever happens, it'll be, she says, but I got to take care of this little girl. And she kept nursing me, and all of a sudden the fever broke, and I started to get better. And the kids never got, the others never got that bad. Nettie and Esther.
The story I heard was that you were so sick that they were afraid the angel of death was going to come for you. So they decided to fool the angel of death by changing your name.
Yeah. That was while I was sick, yeah.
So whose idea was that?
Anteitis.
That's it.
Cousin Marv Garber, his mother went downtown and changed my name from Sarah to Sandra, and changed it around, Beatrice first, and because it was Sarah Bryna, Sarah Beatrice. So they changed it around so the angels wouldn't find me.
And it worked.
They would confuse their records, and they wouldn't find me, and I wouldn't die.
So we come from a heritage or a tradition that had a lot of folklore.
Oh, yeah.
Folklore, folk medicine, folk belief. Now Barry apparently was such a beautiful child. I don't know who it was, but who insisted on him having a red string around his finger?
Could you talk a little louder? I'm straining so my neck hurts here.
Let's wait a second, Gloria. We're about the end of the tape,
Okay.
so this would be a good time to change tapes.
Who, what? Oh, you're waiting to... Just talk a little bit louder. I'm straining so hard to hear.
And folk beliefs, folklore, influenced how we were treated, how we treated others. So the story I heard was that Barry, in particular, was such a beautiful child that somebody said, "No, you just can't have a child like that around without extra protection. You have to put a red string around his finger." So whose idea was that?
That was Tantani's idea. Again, whenever Tante Rochel, that's Cousin Catherine. Do you remember Cousin Catherine at all? Well, that was her mother. That was Daddy's, my father's oldest sister. Gomberg.
Or Rochel or
Rochel Gomberg.
Okay.
So if Tanny knew that Tante Rochel was coming over, she'd ask Mom for a red ribbon and tie it around his wrist. So it would keep the bad eye of the bad angels from touching.
Was she saying that Tante Rachel was bad? Was there something about Tante
Oh, they
Rachel?
never got along. There was such jealousy, would you say, or animosity against each other. Outwardly, they say hello, and
What was it about? Did you know?
Nothing ever happened, honey. It was just, I think Tante Rachel was envious of how close Tantani was with Mom. Tantani could come over anytime. She was welcome with open arms all the time at our house. Tante Rachel, you'd have to make a whole banquet for her before she'd come over. More formal type of thing would have to take place for her to come over. And Tanny and my mom, they could speak 2 or 3 times during the day on the telephone. Anything that was in their minds or bothering them, they discussed it all the time. They're 2 good sisters.
Do you know the story about Mom's mom and her first love? And how Zadie she used to read.
Huh?
Tell about how Bubby got the letter.
Postcards, and in fact, she had them in a trunk at Nettie's when they gave up their, having their own place when Zadie got so sick. When you went to see him, and you'd put the boo, take care of. Watch Bobby take care of his boo-boos on his feet. So when they moved in, when Mom and Dad moved in with Nettie and Harold, everything went to Nettie's house. So Mama had this trunk of and this boyfriend. They were, boyfriend and girlfriend. And he was so brokenhearted, and she was so unhappy because
So this boyfriend, they were boyfriend, girlfriend back in Russia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she thought, go ahead.
And she didn't want to be with Dad, see, with Dad. Well, then when they did fall in love, my grandmother, Bubby Rose, said no. When Dad asked to marry Bubby, she said no. She says the oldest one has to marry first. So Dad he went ahead and he found this man in the place that he worked at, Hartschaffner Marks. It was a men's clothing place that they made clothes there. And he got to be friends with him and introduced him to Auntie Annie, to Mom's sister, and arranged it that they'd have something to do together and everything, just so they'd get to know each other and everything. I don't know what my dad offered, what he did, but Uncle Abe agreed to marry Auntie Annie. They got married, and then Daddy was able to marry Mom.
Okay, I have one question.
Oh.
My understanding from the story is that Bobby was supposed to marry this man from Russia.
Well, yeah, they thought all the time they were going to get married.
But then he died?
No.
No, okay, he didn't die.
No, because she was still getting letters from him when she came.
So what made it break off?
That she had to leave here. Had to come to America with her parents. She would cry, and it didn't help. Bubba Rose, wait a second, I got that mixed up now. She came with Zadie and Bubby. With
Bubby Rose and Zeta Barra.
Yes, it wasn't Bubby Golda that stayed behind. She stayed behind. See, I started to get those two Bubbies mixed up. But Bubby Rose and Zadie Bear and their family all came here together. The boys, the two boys, and the two girls.
And Tantani almost didn't make it because she had glaucoma.
Oh, something in her eyes.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about
They wanted to
that.
send her back.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, something happened. Then they were able to get something to help her, and she was able to get in.
And that was at Ellis Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I still have a question about this old boyfriend, because this is one of my favorite stories, and I don't think I made it up. I have this image of Bubby sitting with you or somebody and reading and weeping over these love letters.
Over what?
Love letters from this boy.
Oh, Mom
That
used to read them to me in Russian. Yeah, I didn't understand them because they were in Russian.
Well, why was she reading them to you? Was she
Just so have somebody listen to her. She translates me.
and then
what she wanted
But she was
to.
still, she was crying over this boy.
Yeah, because he died later on. You know,
This is what I was trying to get to.
but not because of that. It was something else. You know,
So
because
picture this.
she had us girls already. It was a later time.
So Bubby is reading.
She must have
the book,
heard about the death, and she was reading the letters to me.
translating to Mom, weeping, and Zadie, our beautiful, heartful Zadie, is standing behind her, patting her on the shoulder. It's okay, Figolin. It's all right. Is that true?
I can't remember that part, but I do know that we were listening to her read the stories, read the letter that she had received from Russia, that he had died. But all three of us girls were born already, you know. So it was just, you know, like a old friend dying. You get the news of them dying.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me for studying Russian history. And so it was Soviet time, and what it was like getting mail from the Soviet Union.
That must have been right.
You mean the United States wasn't getting it?
No, I was just wondering what it was like, how the mail.
I don't think she heard from him after they got married too much. I don't think she heard from him too much after that. She must have written to him and told him. But I guess someone that knew them and was getting mails through from somebody that was here and someone that was still in Europe kept in contact, and they let Mom know that this died. Or maybe it was one of their boyfriends and girlfriends, you know, that they all used. Because I remember there's a picture. Oh, I would love to have that picture. It was on a postcard. They were all sitting like on a wooden thing. At first I used to think it was a boat, you know, like one of these rowboats. But it was like a plank, really. And they were sitting, and some of them had guitars. And a whole bunch of girls and boys were sitting. Mom showed me. Mom in Russia. Mom showed me who her boyfriend was. He was a nice boy.
Do you know the story of Zadie being apprenticed out when he was
At 7 years old,
I don't think so.
he was the oldest brother, and his father died when he was 7 years old. His mother had him and two other little boys, you know, Uncle Lou and Uncle Henry, and she had the girls already too, Auntie Becky and Auntie Rose. Just the two sisters, I think. That's all I know. And very little that they had, all their income stopped when Zadie, they had some land, but he used to, do the work on the land, and he had others that helped. But they didn't have the money, to pay, or the work hands, couldn't stay for nothing. So she hired the boys out for, to learn a trade. Mm-hmm. And an aunt took them, the 3 boys. And then 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, they were out in the field. And they were, the reason she said she took them was to learn a trade, to learn how to do roofing. Can you see a little 7, 6, and 5-year-old boy doing roofing, learning to do roofing at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning? They were like little slave kids, Never had enough to eat. They'd be called in at night after dark. They'd be given a piece of bread and some kind of soup that was put together, and that was it. And off to bed they'd go. In the morning to be up with almost something as meager as that to eat for breakfast, and sent out to the field again.
How long did that last?
It lasted a long time, honey. I don't know how long it was. But they never, got away from the mothers completely. But I know Zadie Gerber went into the army. He didn't want to. He wanted to. He went to America, and he loved it. He thought it was wonderful. He was about 14 or 15 years old, and he went to America, and he wanted to bring his mother here, and the boys, eventually they'd all should be in America, and says, no, you've got to come back and go to service, go into the Russian army. And after that, after you finish the service, then we'll talk about it. So Zadie came back, and he went into the service and hated it. He disliked it so different than Zadie Avner, because Zadie Avner loved that, all those calisthenics and the shooting and, the excelling in it and all that. He liked that competition. Zadie Gerber didn't go for that. So when he wrote again and told his mother he wants to leave and go to America, let me come home and get you to go to America, she wouldn't hear of it. She says, no, you come home, we'll talk about it. She says, after you're through with your service, we'll go. Well, when he came home from, on his leave, he was so fed up with it, and she started telling him the same stories, and he left. He left for America, and slowly he was putting money together and helped bring Auntie Rose and the boys to America. They all came to America.
How old was he then when he came?
How old was he when?
When he came to America.
The first time?
No, the second time. When he moved.
Well, usually they were through with the service about 21. They'd start about 18. So he wasn't through with the service yet. Mm-hmm. So he was quite young. But he never took to it.
How did he get there to America the first time?
I guess he must have gotten somebody that... it could be Uncle Jake that, he was here ahead of time. Auntie Ida's and cousin Marv's grandfather. Okay. He was a blessed angel to us all the time.
Was he a Gerber or a Garber?
They were all Garbers.
Were they?
Just that when he came to Ellis Island, he was the first one that came here. And they gave him the name, they said it as Gerber. And when Auntie Rose came here with Auntie Becky and the 2 boys, they wrote it as Garber. And they had it on their paper, so they left it that way. And Daddy never did anything about it. So it was Gerber and Garber.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Daddy might have had some help with Hayas and with those slips that they got, like a voucher from these different Jewish organizations to come over on one of these ships, to America with all the immigrants.
Huh.
It wasn't easy.
No.
It wasn't an easy life for them.
But they were so generous. Like Zadie, I don't know what happened in your family, Zadie Gerber, but apparently in Zadie Avner's house, if somebody came who was a landsman who came from the same area, all the kids would go sleep in the same bed or on the floor or out on the porch, and the new relatives or friends would come and sleep in the beds. And
you don't see. I never talked about it.
It was a boarding house.
Ah.
We'd end up with 3 and 4 in the bed, and the landslide would come in, and they'd have a bed for them always.
Well, I know you had a cousins club.
Oh yeah. Oh, but that was after. That was later. We were married already, and Daddy was the only one. Daddy Avner, your daddy, was the only one that really enjoyed it. Harold didn't want any part of it. Come as a favorite of Bobby sometimes, maybe once in the whole time that we had the cousin club. Esther never came.
What's a cousin club?
It was the cousins and their wives or husbands, whoever, and once a month we'd meet at someone's house. We'd have dinner at their house, whatever it was, and then we'd play cards or we'd play games, or we'd just talk about old times. It was so interesting, and Daddy loved it. Daddy Al, he loved it. He loved it. He'd sit there like transformed when he'd hear all these stories about the family. But Mom used to say, he's a zugerlosener Mensch. A person that gets involved and is interested in other people. And the other two weren't. Though Harold turned out to be, interested in other people, but in a different way than Daddy. Yeah. He'd go out or do something, not just, go to a park with them or something. That was the extent of it.
He always took us around.
What,
San
honey?
Francisco.
He was so proud of that, California.
Oh, yes. He was like the mayor of San Francisco.
What did they call him? The ambassador of San Francisco.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Knew everybody and knew every inch of the place.
And what an awful driver he was. Oh, I'd get so sick when I'd be driving with him when I was older. It's 1 second forward and 2 seconds backward.
We thought it was so funny because, he knew every street in San Francisco. But then when he came to our wedding, he got lost. He was the only one. He was late for the rehearsal dinner. Yeah.
What about Jewish holidays? What about Jewish holidays? Did we celebrate them? Did you celebrate them? Was there any kind of education?
I remember when we were young, on a Pesach, Daddy would go down in the basement when we when we had our own building with the 6 flats. We owned the building right across the street from where we had the colonial porch, where you kids know. We owned the building. 4 flats were rented, and 2 of them were one was for us and one was for the partners. Uncle Louis Bass, the one that used to go fishing with Mark and Barry, But Uncle Lou's wife was a real little demon, and it didn't work out too well. But before that, when Passover used to come around, you know, Daddy would go down in the basement and he'd bring up all the pots and the pans and everything, you know, to change, bring down the hummets, all the hummus sticker pots, put them away for the 8 or 10 days. And Mom would have company over for the Seders and everything. So that was before, that was when we were little. Then afterwards, I can't remember too much, but I do know that we had kosher all the time in the house, till Daddy found out. This was during or after the war was over with Germany.
So you were already married?
Oh, yeah. No. Yes, I was married because I was giving Mom my ration tickets, because she was always making everything, whatever she cooked or anything. And I had the two, you and Barry. Whatever she made enough so it should be for me too. She'd bring up whole pots of stuff, of the meatballs, of the chicken and the soup and the krugels and everything. So I should have it for the week, you know. And then with the war, and then Daddy wasn't away in the war yet, and he found out that Bobby Golda was killed.
And Bobby
His
Golda,
mother.
His mom.
Even though she was mean to him.
And
she was still in Russia.
And he found out, and his sister Nettie. His sister Nettie, and Bubba Golda didn't let Nettie come to America with Auntie Rose and the other sisters and brothers. She says, no, the youngest child got to stay with her mother. And then the mother, Auntie Nettie also kept her daughter there too. And they were both killed.
So from that point on, what?
From that point on, Daddy just couldn't get over it, honey. His eyes were always so red over a long time. He says, Fanny, he says, no more keeping kosher. If a God can let people kill people like my sister, Nettie, and her little girl, and my mother, they can let that happen. We don't need to keep kosher anymore. And she says, you're not that bothered anymore. She used to give me her tickets. They just shoved the meat at me. I'd have to go after the butcher was closed. We never knew what Mama was going to get. All he was anxious for was those stamps, you know, those ration stamps that we had to get to cover the amount of meat or fish or whatever, or meat it was, or chicken. You had to have the stamps. But I gave Mom all of mine because I wasn't even cooking, because she was doing all the cooking.
Darn it, you should have gotten her recipe for chicken fricassee first.
I'd never be able to copy her stuff.
Chicken fricassee.
God. She was a marvelous cook, but never could translate into a recipe what she was doing. Every time it was a little different.
This and some of that.
It was so good, but it was never the same, same measured amount.
So you need a rest now?
Huh?
Is this a good time to stop? You need a rest? You're tired.
No, I'm okay, but I'd like to stop talking for a while.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. His birthday was the day before Uncle Perry.
Okay.
Uncle Perry was born on the 21st of November, Mom was at his, I believe, 9th birthday party when they were about to bring in the cake, when her water broke.
For
Me.
you.
Yeah, because she was born on the 22nd.
Because I was born on the 22nd. So Perry, whether joking or not, he always said he never forgave her for leaving his party before the cake.
So that means
He was so young.
3?
Probably, yeah, 33.
So he was
And he was 77 when he died?
Well, 33, and Mom was 21.
Yeah.
So there's 12 years between them.
I think there must be more. Because if he's only 9 years
9 years
older than me, and Mom is 21 years older than me,
Yeah, that's
okay.
9 to 12.
So there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 stories about Uncle Perry, or 3. You know the one about how he would tease Dad. Dad would love to watch him, when he was really little. Our dad, Perry was quite little, and he'd take a piece of clay, and he'd make a little statue of George Washington, or Abraham Lincoln, or an animal, and he'd show it to Dad, and Dad would want to touch it, say, "Oh, can I see it?" And he would get a grin on his face, and he would squish it till it was like a snake. And Dad would be so disappointed, and he'd run away laughing, and then Dad would get over it and be talking to Mom or somebody, and he'd make something else that looked so amazingly lifelike. And Dad would, "Oh, Pear, please, could I just see it?" No. So he was that kind of a little mischief maker guy. But Dad admired him so much that later on he wanted to go to the Chicago Institute of Art. And there's no way that my grandparents, Bubby and Zadie, would let him go by. I mean, he was 13 years old. They're not going to let him go downtown on a streetcar by himself. But it was our father who persuaded them that it was really important for him to be able to go.
You went.
And he went when he was that young.
Wow.
So that was like, I mean, he was so gifted and talented, but that was a wonderful thing for him. So we fast forward to him already having his own business. Not his own business, but I think he was working for someone. I don't know if you know this about Uncle Perry. You know that he used to do the store windows at Macy's in New York and all the animated stuff, like going to visit Uncle Perry's, his white whale studio, whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was like going to visit Santa's workshop.
Yeah. Very
You know, everything was happening. There were little elves around making all this cute stuff. Well, he wanted to take a course in anthropology for some reason. So it was at the Museum of Science and Industry. Do you remember that? Where they had trains and, all kinds of great exhibits. So he's taking the course, and for the course he had to go see this movie. Now, we've probably all seen this movie that was taken in the late 1800s by the Department of Bureau of Ethnography, something, where they took pictures of tribal groups doing their tribal stuff. So this was about Eskimos, and I think it was the Tlingits and the Kwakiutls, and they have, if you've seen this, you can't forget it. They're standing up in like a war canoe, and they're all chanting and wearing masks and all rowing at the same time. And it was fascinating. And I remembered this, having seen something like it. And he said, but afterwards, when they're doing the credits or whatever they were doing, they would have individual shots of these Eskimos, portraits, and mostly individuals, but he remembers there being 3 pictures, 3 men standing together. And he said, if you would replace the furry hoods, the mukluks, whatever they were wearing, with fedoras, it looked exactly like his father, our Zadie, Uncle Lou, and Uncle Sam, the 3 brothers. So if you think about it, they did have a little Asian look, a little Asian slant to the eye. So apparently, at one point, Uncle Perry was on a short flight to somewhere, And he tells them his name, and he sits in his seat. And then somebody comes up to him right before the boarding was over and says, "Excuse me, this is my seat." And Uncle Perry says, "No, this is my seat." He says, "What's your name?" "Perrin Gerber." "No, my name is Perrin Gerber."
No.
Honest to God, same exact name. So they straighten it out. They decide to sit next to each other. And this Perrin Gerber had done a lot of genealogy and had somehow discovered that in the 17th century or 18th century, there was a community of Jews in some area which is now Switzerland that had been exiled to somewhere in the far east north,
Right.
like Siberia,
Yeah.
and that they had gone over the Bering Straits and had intermarried. So who knows? Isn't that not? I mean, that's possible.
Mark was going on about like the eye color with the yellow specks in the eyes, and just the cheekbones, and just
The
various
cheekbone.
things that before the landmass was broken up, that they used to travel back and forth between Alaska and Siberia, and that then when that broke up, those that were in Alaska ended up staying in Alaska. And
Wouldn't you just love to know?
and that he was in this movie theater or something. He said he saw that picture and said, "That's my dad." Yeah,
It's amazing.
it is.
So I loved that story. One time I had been meditating, just nothing to do with anything else. I'd been meditating, and then for some reason I went to the bathroom and I was looking myself in the mirror, and I saw superimposed on my face a face of like an Eskimo mask, the kind where it's a little bit like a beak,
Yeah.
and the eyes are very lozengey shaped, and I stared at myself, and it was like, going into another reality. Anyway, that's not the story I was going to tell. So what? There was another story about Uncle Perry. And I didn't learn this until Mom and Dad and I were visiting him near Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you were with us or not. Tell me if this makes sense. Might have just been with me and Mom and Dad. He started talking about how nobody knew this. Nobody in the family knew this. But he had secretly applied for a passport. This was before the liberation, before Israeli independence. So this is over 60 years ago.
Wow.
He wanted to join the Haganah, the underground. And I don't know how he had met this man, but there was one man who was kind of in charge of his little group, his little cell. All young people, teenagers. And they were being prepared. You get your passport, this is what you have to do, these are our tickets. And they were kind of training them on the kind of things they would have to do, because they needed young people, and they needed committed people, and they wanted Jewish people. So they were almost ready. They'd already gotten their passports, and they were just talking about what to expect. And there had been an article in the paper, or somebody mentioned something about the Ethiopian Jews, the Falashas, and what was going to happen about them coming to Israel. And the guy who was in charge of their group said, No. Israel is for the Jews from Russia and Poland. Israel is for the white Jews. No, not the black Jews from Ethiopia. This is for the Ashkenazis.
Wow.
Perry asked the guy again what he said, because he couldn't believe what he was hearing.
Yeah.
That here people who didn't have a homeland, people who were being persecuted, were going to now persecute other people. And so the guy said, no, this is... So once he got that, he tore his passport up.
Wow.
And never went. But he was like within a whisker. Mom never knew. Bobby and Zadie never knew.
Oh my goodness.
Wouldn't that have been a different life? That was before Sandy, before anything.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can turn
That
this
was a
off
tough
now.
time, and the leader at that point, one of the